Hey everybody, Preston Poulter here with Pocket Jacks Comics. More updates on the Jawbreakers lawsuit. This came out just today from Mark Waid. He made a statement and he shared some of the deposition that they took of the retailer involved, Antarctic Press. So we're going to go over that. According to Mr. Waid, he makes a very big statement that it completely exonerates him, and anyone that says otherwise is willfully lying to you. We will review his statement and the veracity therein. So let's go over the. Now I'm a little bit at a loss because I don't have the original complaint, and I have to pay money to get it. It's not worth it for me. But it would be hard for me to imagine. Typically, when you're filing a claim, you just make a whole bunch of causes of action. So it would be hard for me to imagine that they didn't put just straight up defamation in the cause of action. So I'm thinking that Richard C. Meyer is suing for both tortious interference claim, which means, hey, I had this thing that was going and it was going to make me money, and you stopped it, as well as defamation, which would be spent, and you made a big statement to other people that damaged my reputation, which was not true. So I think there are two competing claims, and just because, say, the tortious interference might get shot down doesn't mean that the lawsuit could not proceed on defamation. But I don't have the complaint in front of me. But again, it would be hard for me to imagine that they wouldn't have made those allegations and stated that as a cause of action. All right, so here is what Mr. Waid said. I gotta say, as a person who does his own writing, my goodness, he is loquacious. He just this is like diarrhea of the keyboard, man. It's just like blah. There's so many words, but let's wade through it. Okay, I am sending this out to my GoFundMe supporters shortly. I'm happy. It's a happy update on the lawsuit filed against me by Richard C. Meyer, one of the perceived leaders of Comicsgate, and it bears repeating here. Feel free to share far and wide, but prepare to be assailed by Comicsgate harassment if you do. As you recall, the main claim in the plaintiff's publicity-seeking lawsuit against me is that I committed what's known as tortious interference by phoning his potential publisher to allegedly coerce and intimidate him into canceling the graphic novel contract he had with the plaintiff. This has been relentless, unending narrative. If something is relentless, and unending, you can take out one of those words, right? You could just say his relentless narrative or his unending narrative. At the same time, you could take out both of those words. You know why? Because if I'm suing you and I'm saying, hey, you stepped on my foot and then punched me in the face, and then you depose me and I say the same thing, and then you put me on the witness stand at trial and I say the same thing, that's just called making a claim and backing it up with evidence. The idea that because they say the same thing, it's a relentless, unending narrative blows my mind. All right. And his followers since May 2018. There have been thousands and thousands of social media posts and hundreds of hours of YouTube videos since them putting this forth to be the absolute unassailable truth, using it worst of all as an excuse to spew all sorts of objectively bigoted, racist, misogynist bile. Who's the objective judge? If something is there a judge by which I can submit and go, pardon me, Mr. Racist Judge, can you sign off on this tweet? Just so that it will be not objectively bigoted. All right. Objectively bigoted, racist, misogynist bile towards any one of you who might defend or believe in me. But here's the thing. Here's what the plaintiff kept from you. The publisher, who I allegedly threatened and coerced, was deposed last month and gave his testimony under oath. Here's a link to the recent court filing that allows you to read the testimony in greater context. So I read through the whole document. Unfortunately, it's not the complete deposition transcript, and there is a protective order in the case, meaning that details of certain, personal information is not going to be released to the public. So that means we will never be able to get the entire deposition transcript. But, oh well. I encourage you to, but let's cut to the heart of it. The emphasis added are the publisher's actual statements regarding... These emphasis added are the publisher's actual statement regarding the unendingly repeated allegation... Unendingly repeated... Allegation... This guy's a writer. That I somehow muscled him. Statements made under the threat of perjury. Question. Did you make the decision? You made the decision for Anarctic Press, correct? Correct. And that was your decision, correct? 100%. And you made that decision voluntarily, correct. And Mark Waid, did he do anything to prevent AP from publishing Mr. Meyer's book? No. All right, so that is in the deposition transcript, so kudos. Nothing's been fabricated here. Now, this doesn't defeat the tortious interference claim, although Mr. Wade's about to go on and jump up and down and scream it absolutely does. It doesn't. Because I'm not saying the claim is 100% going to go through. I've read the deposition transcript or what was released of it. It does damage Richard C. Meyer's case. I'm not going to lie to you there. It does damage the case. But is it a complete slam dunk like there's no way? No, it doesn't. All right, so let's go through a hypothetical or what Richard C. Meyer's attorney is going to be trying to prove. So I'm Anarctic Press, and I'm just kind of strolling down the street, and somebody walks up to me and says, hey, Richard C. Meyer's a white supremacist. I'm like, you don't say. He's like, no, he's totally a white supremacist. Okay, so did that man coerce me? No. And then based on that information, is it my decision whether to publish his book? Yes. Did he interfere in that decision to publish his book? Well, I could say he did or he didn't. I could just say, well, he just told me he was a white supremacist. And that would still be my decision, right? And that would still be a voluntary decision, right? And Mr. Waid would not have acted to prevent me from publishing the book, right? So all these answers are probably going to be taken 100% at face value because who could contradict them? So, but they don't exonerate the tortious interference claim. Why? Because if Mr. Waid made a statement to the publisher, which is verifiably false, that influenced that decision, and led to the dropping of the contract, that is tortious interference. For that matter, tortious interference can actually just be a suggestion to breach the contract, saying, "Oh, you signed a and you see this in sports cases. If somebody signs up to be quarterback for a team, and then the other team is like, "Oh, I just signed with them. If you sign with us, we'll win the Super Bowl." And they're like, "Oh, I didn't think about it that way. You know what? Screw you people. I'm not going to play for you." And you encourage someone to breach a contract, that's tortious interference. I don't make the rules. It is what it is. But, so, now let's go over the rest of Mr. Waid's. But I just want to take an aside and go, this does not 100% slam dunk defend Mr. Waid. All right. Despite what he's about to say, this finally publicly validates everything both I and the publisher have said to anyone who would listen, again, under oath, completely... This man has to repeat himself so often. Completely contradicting the plaintiff's claims, the publisher swore to the court that I did nothing to prevent him from publishing the plaintiff's book. Again, if you say so-and-so is a bad person, and then based on your statement, I decide on my own not to deal with them, then we could say you did nothing to prevent me from dealing with them. But that, again, is not the case before us. There's no, however, following the statement. There's no... God, why does this man have to repeat himself so much? Go read the actual deposition. It reveals the actual factors that contributed to his decision, none of which, as he has now attested, involve me. I read the deposition. That's not true. We'll get into it. But if we boil down the deposition, essentially there were two people at Anarctic Press. And one of them is Mr. Dunn. And Mr. Dunn was the one who ultimately spoke with Mr. Waid and then later decided, okay, we're not going to publish the book. Now, what they do go over in the deposition is there was things he was made aware of by other people, and there were people within his company that are like, you should not be working with this guy. And he was under pressure, and then he took the call from Mr. Waid, and subsequent to taking the call, he decides, I'm not going to publish the book. Now, the sections of the deposition transcript where they were asking questions about how much did this interfere or how much of an influence was this conversation aren't there. So it's difficult for me, all I can do is speculate. But if we just put forward the timeline, all right, so we're going down, we're Anarchic Press, we're Mr. Dunn, and I've decided I want to publish the book. And then people are like, people within the company are like, you shouldn't do that. He's a bad guy. Okay, fine. I still think we should publish the book. I take a call from Mr. Waid. Okay, yeah. And Mr. Waid says that, over the course of that conversation, he's racist, he's sexist, whatever. And I'm like, okay, all right, cool, thanks, boom. And then later on I decide, you know what? After that conversation, we're not going to publish the book. Well, seems like Mr. Waid had some influence, right? Right? I mean, come on. So his statement here that I had absolutely no influence whatsoever on his decision. No, the deposition doesn't say that. Sorry, that not validated by the actual deposition transcript, or that you are uninvolved. Doesn't say that. The actual factors included damning correspondence from AP's own editor-in-chief, a good friend, almost family, telling the publisher he did not want AP associated with plaintiff because of plaintiff's own conduct, or else the EIC would want his name removed from all AP's books. So that is part of the deposition, where essentially the editor-in-chief, who's, as he puts, good friend and almost family, said, if you go forward with publishing this book, I want my name taken off of all books that we are publishing. Okay, so I mean, that also is a factor. And again, if Mr. Dunn would have said, all right, let's step back and play, just analyze the evidence. You better believe that if Mr. Dunn went there and swore, Mr. Waid's conversation with me had absolutely no influence on my decision whatsoever, that page would be presented first, right? That would be absolutely right there. Ding, ding, ding. They'd seem to be pointing to it look, see, no influence. So I'm going to speculate that Mr. Waid had some influence, but did he have all the influence? Well, no. Okay, so now we've got an interesting case where we get to put in front of a jury, and now the jury needs to decide and go, well, was Mr. Waid's level of influence enough for him to carry legal liability for the decision not to publish? And that would be up for the jury to decide. So I don't see that this case can be defeated by, say, for instance, a motion for summary judgment, where the judge would decide prior to going to trial. I think this case is most likely going to go to trial, and a jury will have to make that decision. That being said, there were a number of things in the deposition transcript where, they're showing and this tweet where Richard C. Meyer called, one of the people who worked at Marvel a cum dumpster. Were you aware of that? And the guy's like, yeah, I saw that one. And, when Mr. Waid called, did you agree with him that those statements were indefensible? He's like, yeah, I agreed with him. So regarding that, that's going to be tough. Those statements are not going to play out well in front of a jury. And that's where you shouldn't go on social media and say really bad things, because when you're in the sterile environment of a courtroom and it's all completely quiet, and you've got your 12 jurors sitting over there, some of which are probably going to be women, and these tweets are read out about so Mr. Meyer, you admit to sending this tweet calling this employee of Marvel Publishing a cum dumpster, do you not? Right? And now we get to ask Mr. Dunn, and you were aware of the cum dumpster tweet, where you're not they will just take that one term and just beat you over the head with it. Everything from that very forward. And then on May 10th, the cum dumpster tweet, yes, you did send that. So it's those tweets do not make Richard C. Meyer look at all sympathetic. He looks like a big jerk, and that is it. Essentially, the goings-on within Anarchic Press of people like, dude, I don't want my name on this book, or I don't want my name on any book if you're going to publish this guy. Okay, I mean, that seems reasonable. And it's certainly not 100% Mr. Waid's fault. No. Did he play a factor in it? That's up for a jury to decide, but if I'm sitting on that jury, I'm going to go, well, yeah, he was a factor. Was it enough of a factor for him to have legal liability? Ooh, that's a tough one. On that one, I'm going to have to precisely read the jury instructions as handed to me by the judge. So if the jury instructions are, did Mr. Waid have any influence whatsoever on the decision, then Mr. Waid's going down, but they're probably not going to say that. So it's certainly damaging to Richard C. Meyer's case. I'm not going to read the rest of the statement. It is so repetitive and he is so verbose. I wonder how this man got a job writing. But is Richard C. Meyer's case damaged by this? Yes. Yes, it is. So there's that. Now, does this, that's why I talk about, there probably is a competing claim just for defamation. And that one's a lot simpler. That one is, Mr. Waid stood up at Comic Palooza 2018 in Houston and basically said Richard C. Meyer is a white supremacist, words to that effect, to a big group of people. Okay, well, now we don't have to necessarily reference the cum dumpster tweet, right? Now it's more like, you made this claim. Can you defend him as a white supremacist? Well, we can say he certainly said some mean things, but white supremacist is an awfully specific term, in my opinion, not supported by the evidence. So the defamation claim at this point in the case is way stronger than the tortious interference claim. We'll see. At this point, it's kind of murky who's going to win. A lot of this is going to come down to who's more sympathetic. I think if I'm completely remove myself from the situation, I suppose I don't know either of these people, I'm probably gonna find for Mr. Waid because look, it's kind of reasonable to go, oh, this person is a friend of mine, or at least I knew this person at an Arctic Press. I saw they were getting some heat. I called him and I said, hey, you did know that, this Richard C. Meyer guy you've decided to publish, that he did, he did say, cum dumpster. You see how Richard's going to get beat over the head with that stuff. Now, one of the other claims that Mark Waid goes on to make is that there wasn't even a signed contract. That doesn't matter. The deposition does say that essentially Mr. Dunn was considering them to have reached an agreement. So there was, I'm sure a jury will most likely, I have strong suspicion that the jury will find that there was an agreement in place to publish the book. So there's that. Anyway, that is what we have. Regarding whether Mr. Waid bullied Antarctic Press, probably not. Although, if I'm the attorney for Richard C. Meyer, I'm going to go, well, what role did Mark Waid have in basically releasing the hounds on social media and saying, Antarctic Press is publishing hate speech, get them. If you can put together that link, that Mark Waid basically says, release the hounds, and then here come all these people, okay, well, now you might have something. So far, I haven't seen evidence to that effect, but, at the same time, I haven't seen the whole case. Anyway, that is the update today. On May the 9th, coming up, I'm going to be launching a Kickstarter for my book, White Lily, issue number 3. It is the story of the 2 deadliest female combat pilots in history. There's a link for the Kickstarter down in the description. I would encourage you to back it. And if you like what I had to say here, please share it with your friends, subscribe, do all that one. You know what to do. Take care.